Hello, everyone. Classic here again with Brian Moyer, President and CEO at Greater Nashville Technology Council, down here at Tech Hill Commons. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Welcome
Yes.
to Tech Hill.
Hey, man, thank you. It's one of the, 'cause since I've been out here, I haven't been able to investigate as much as possible. So I appreciate these opportunities to have these conversations because it also forces me to say, oh, this is a nice area. I've never been into South Nashville yet. I guess would be considered South Nashville.
Yeah, just the edge of that.
Cool. So, looking forward to this because of the amount of perspective you have being in tech since I was a kid. And I know we can't get into it all with just this one simple conversation.
You calling me old?
It was my way of saying it without saying it. Seeing some of those early experiences that you had running through your resume and whatnot. I was like, man, this has been going on since I was still trying to figure out what cartoons I loved. But we'll try to cover as much as possible, starting at the LinkedIn beginning. That's what I had to go off of. So I want to open with a two-parter. You finished college in '79, and you founded your first company in 1990, NW Technologies. So what was that 11-year period? Was it like a discovery period of some sort, I reckon? And then how did you come about starting the company years later, pre-dot-com boom?
So there was a lot going on in between that. So I actually, when you say I finished my college education, I actually dropped out of college in my senior year to launch my first company. But it's not related to tech, and so it's like this is a different part of my life. It was, back in the day, it was financial planning, financial services. So I was selling stocks and bonds and tax shelters and spent several years in that field before moving into the tech space. So that transition along the way, and because we don't have all the time in the world, I will abbreviate this. I ended up in the consumer electronics industry. So I was in St. Louis, sales manager over 4.5 states, and we were selling Kenwood Home and Car Audio and TIAC, and it was fun. It was a really fun gig for a young guy traveling all over and doing auto sound contests. We were approached by a company from the UK called Psion, Psion, to sell this really wild idea, a handheld computer. So they came to the United States and went after companies like ours that had relationships with various retail outlets to try and get placement for what they called the Psion Organizer. Barry Balcourt was the sales manager, came in from New York, and he said, one day everybody will carry one of these, and it'll be your calendar, and it'll be your address book, and it'll organize your life. And I'm looking at that going, wow, that is so cool. And so that's when I decided to teach myself to code so that I could start writing programs for this little handheld device. And the first thing I wrote was an expense tracking program to track the expenses of my sales team. And then I was talking to a friend of mine that was in a hospital over their supplies. Material manager was his title. And he said, I've got a problem. He said, what is that thing? I said, well, it's got a modem, it's got a barcode reader, it's got a printer. He said, I think this could help solve a problem that I have. And his problem was keeping track of supplies as they were being used in the hospital. So a nurse would pull a supply off of a rack and use it for a patient, and the nurse was supposed to pull the label off and put it on a charge sheet so that they knew that supply had been used on that patient, and so they could charge and get the revenue. So he had a team of, many people working 24 hours a day, 3 different shifts, trying to keep track of these supplies and these charges, and they were still losing 21% of all that revenue. So we replaced their clipboards with this handheld computer. We barcoded all the supplies, and we automated that whole process and reduced their losses from 21% to less than 2% in just a couple of months' time. So that was my entry into the tech industry and kind of becoming a tech entrepreneur. And the lesson that I learned there was, when you're launching a company, find a problem that needs to be solved, and then create a solution for that problem, rather than create a solution over here and then go looking for a problem to solve. You know, it's much better if you find the problem and you create a solution to solve that problem.
Yeah. Well, one, it'd be great if we can find a picture of one of these. Like, I would love to see, like, if it was like big and bulky, if you guys actually had like a really nice smaller size.
I could get you a picture. I have a small museum at home of these things. So it's about the size of a phone, only it was about, you know, 1.5 inches thick. 2-line by 16 character display. I mean, whoa.
Yeah. Sounds like a Game Boy. But also, I think it's funny that, like, to this day, there's so many folks that can still utilize that. That was like great thinking. What year was this?
So this was in the late 80s. I actually launched that company in 1990, as you saw. But it was the late 80s when Scion came into the United States trying to get placement for these products. And then, you know.
So this was MW?
This was MW Technologies.
Got you. And then from there, you transitioned into, what was it, another space in like 2000 or 97?
Yeah, so in 97, I actually, we started with that product, and then, you know, as anybody that's been an entrepreneur knows, you spend a lot of time following the dollars. Yeah. And so the next hospital I talked to said, oh man, we love this, and we've got the same problem, but you know, we're still using paper-based purchase orders. We think we probably need to automate that process before we buy what you have. I said, well, all right, what does that look like? You know, so they hired me to write a purchasing and inventory control application, and then they came back and hired me to write a surgery scheduling application, and then they came back and hired me to write a capital asset tracking. And so before I knew it, I had this suite of products and one customer. And, you know, in retrospect, if I had run with that first product, I probably would have been better off instead of taking all that time to create these others. But that's what I did, you know, chasing the dollar, and it all worked out. So along the way, I was introduced to a lot of different people in the healthcare sector. And one of those was located in Nashville, and they hired me to do some work for them, to write another application that was similar to what I'd been doing. And the more we talked, the more we realized that, you know, here we are, two small companies kind of calling on the same set of customers. It might make sense if we joined forces. And so in 97, we did that. And as I learned more about what Nashville had in terms of healthcare, it was obvious that this was where we needed to be. And so my wife and I moved down here, and I took on a partner, and I renamed from MW Technologies to PHG Technologies, and that's how we ended up here.
I was wondering if it was like an evolution,
yes,
of the first, or something brand new. So you've seen like different iterations of startup culture from the 90s to now. I was wondering, what are some of those differences? What are some of those similarities? Because you hear people talk about, I wonder if it's the same. You hear people talk about music. If you hear people in the hip hop space talking about the music labels of the 90s and how they were throwing money around, like there was so much being spent, and now how things have kind of slowed down a bit. You know, things are more automated. We go into streaming. We're trying to control the dollar. I wonder how that was for the tech space, because it seems like we're kind of getting there now, but there's still also so much money being thrown around because we want to see what other rooms we can open up, what other opportunities can be presented. So, like, you know, here's a fund that we've newly built, so you can go run off and just test things.
So I see that today for sure. Back as I was starting my companies, the thought never really entered my mind. I mean, I bootstrapped. So there's several ways you can start companies, you know, and as I was starting MW Technologies and it morphed into PHG Technologies, I found customers to pay me instead of investors. So I found customers. So I'm kind of sold and biased with that way of building a company. Some of what I see today doesn't completely make sense to me, where, the metric of success is how much money have you raised? So to me, it's always been, what problem are you solving? And do you have a product? And do you have a customer? And have they paid you, have you made any money at all yet? Before you go out and start asking somebody else to invest money in your company. It's just a bias that I have and continue to have today. Certainly, after you've reached that point and you're wanting to scale, a lot of times that does require outside capital, and that's the appropriate time to come in. But, nothing like WeFunder existed back in the day, which actually would have made a whole lot of sense, because as we were needing money, it wasn't big amounts of dollars. It was just, I gotta get past the next few months until I can get a few more customers lined up. And so being able to raise those smaller amounts of money with a platform like WeFunder would have made a whole lot of sense to me.
Yeah, it speaks more to the idea of sustainability, and kind of like, and it's the ultimate testament of it, being able to say that, like, well, I have this many customers that are willing to get me over that next hump. And even at thinking that you're saying earlier on about the idea of bootstrapping versus any type of like large scale investment, your customer is your first investor. Like, that's your proof in concept. It's everything all across the board. And so I had that same thinking, where it seems like a lot of people are building to sell versus like building to actually build.
Right. Yeah, I look back now and I think, how crazy is it that I'm literally still teaching myself how to code, and I've got this hospital who's paying me money to write a program for them to solve a big problem that they had. It worked out, and I feel very fortunate that it worked out like that.
Yeah, something our founder speaks to, the idea of irrational confidence, the beauty of not knowing any better, but not. To me that's that creative artist spirit, where it's like something is telling me to be here, is that calling, and we're gonna figure it out, even though other people are probably saying otherwise, or no one just is looking in general. Like, I feel like that's that artist mentality. You look at a white canvas, but you see that final product in your head. But everyone else just sees a white canvas.
That is so true. And I think, again, looking back, it's kind of hard to see when you're in the moment, that a lot of my early success was actually because I wasn't trained in software development. I was just going out and saying, okay, how do you do your job today? Let's automate that. And while we're doing that, let's look to see if there's ways that we can improve upon that. So instead of, again, creating a solution over here and trying to find a problem to solve with it, we were literally just, didn't know any better. Show me what you're doing and let's automate this. And I think it made it a much more user-friendly product and a product that had more success than if we'd gone a different way.
Yeah, this makes you think about, so this next area is something else that I noticed, and it kind of speaks more to the experimentation that it seems like that you kind of dove into more and more. One thing I appreciated about your list of experiences was the fact that you moved around. There was a couple places in Tennessee, Texas, St. Louis. Did you look forward to opportunities like that, to work in other places? Was that important to you? And I ask because a lot of people find it hard to leave what they know, even for greener pastures, or the idea of it. They'll stay into those comfort zones.
So the primary move, well, one is I'm an Army brat. My dad's was a career military, and so we moved around a lot when I was a kid. And then we ended up in Missouri and actually spent a lot of years there. This is going to show my age, but we spent 30 years in Missouri before coming here, and we've been here for 22 years now. So there's really been, I know I was like 10 when we moved down here. There's really been two major places that I've lived, but then through my work, I was kind of taken to some other locations. So after coming here with that company and eventually selling out to my partner, I ended up working for a friend of mine who used to be a customer, a client of mine, who was the CEO of a software company, and he brought me on to be a CIO for his company. It was officially headquartered here, but my team, all of my staff, was in Dallas, and then we bought another company in California. And so that was a 3-year period of my life where I was literally on a plane every single week between Nashville and Dallas and California. And it was a great learning experience. But after 3 years, it was like, I got to get off of this merry-go-round. I've learned a lot. I've learned a ton in doing that, but it's really time to kind of settle back down and get back to Nashville and get back home.
Yeah, I'm in the early stages of that now. I've been to like Canada twice, my entire years of living in Philadelphia, and so now it's Nashville, did Texas, been to San Fran for the first time over like the last couple of months, twice now, and so still in the early stages of moving around as much as possible, just because of all the perspectives, all the different feels. Like San Fran doesn't feel like Nashville. The people move differently, but both are equally important to get that information, download that data, and figure out the best way to provide value in those areas. I feel like the more you know, the more you can do. And so I was wondering if that was like a part of it when I saw you're moving around, like how much was, just I need to understand the cultures. I need to understand what everybody has going on so that way I can better make this product so it becomes more widespread.
Yeah, it wasn't so much intentional for me as it was. It's where the job took me. But that said, it provided such great perspective to see what was going on in these different parts of the country, and I think it's helped a lot in my current role here with the Technology Council in trying to really make Nashville what we want Nashville to be. Not to copy anybody else, but to really leverage what's unique to Nashville and make Nashville the best place it can be.
Yeah, so sweeping around to the Tech Council, we're here now. Congrats on all the continued success with that. How's it going? Where are you looking to take it? How were things before? Even like when you guys were, I don't know if you founded it or how that came about, but how's that timeline been looking?
So there's a lot going on. It's a very exciting time, not just to live in Nashville. It's a really cool city to live in, but to be in Nashville in the tech sector is doubly fun, at least for me. I'm a little biased. So I did not found this organization. It was founded in '99, which coincidentally only is the year I moved here. So I came here with a startup and realized that this organization had just launched. I thought I ought to be a part of this. And so I was a founding member of the Tech Council, which is just a cool kind of touch point way back when. But when I decided that I needed to get off of this merry-go-round and get settled back into Nashville, I sat down with a friend of mine to kind of help me think through what that might look like. And he took me through this exercise of what's the most important things. And, you start with a list of 100, and you keep narrowing it down. And we ended up with, needs to be a Nashville opportunity, needs to be tech. And I'd had some nonprofit experience along the way. I was president of Tennessee HIMSS, which is the Health Information Management Society. And that was kind of a meaningful experience for me that I enjoyed. And so nonprofit was kind of there on the list of things that I thought was important. Believe it or not, the day I'm in his office talking through this, he gets a phone call from the chairman of the board of the Tech Council saying, we are starting a search for a new CEO for the Tech Council. You can't make this stuff up. So, we still had to go through the whole process. There were a lot of people that were interested in the job, but that's how I ended up where I am today, is that day and that phone call that came in, which really leveraged so many different experiences that I've had as a business owner, as a software developer, as a CIO, just so many different experiences I had in different aspects of the tech scene that I think has helped me relate to the broad community of tech workers that we've got here in Nashville right now.
Yeah, they say luck is a combination of timing and preparation. Like it's like, you know, at the end of the day, is it actually luck, or were you just ready and, you know, the opportunity finally presented itself? It's really good alignment. It's one of those things where, like, as wild as it may seem, you know, how it came together. If you think back on it, who would have been better position, like better suited for the role? Like, you literally have built up this thing and put the proper energy out in the universe, and it literally started to sculpt around you, and knowing, you know, when you were ready to walk in. So now that you've seen all those different areas, and I know that, like, Nashville, they say it was like kind of built on like healthcare tech more than anything. You're watching the world evolve even more. How important is it to diversify those opportunities and open up the conversation to tech and other spaces?
Yeah, I think it's very important. So it was healthcare that brought me to Nashville, and I spent 25 years of my life in that health tech field. Since taking this role, it's really been refreshing to me to be able to interact with the broader tech community. And I'm always nothing at all against healthcare and what that represents to our economy, which is big time. But it's important to me to diversify what Nashville is, particularly as it relates to tech. And so I'm always looking for those opportunities, and there's a lot of them. You know, fintech is starting to show itself as an up and comer here. A lot of activity in the fintech space. Logistics, of course, with particularly with Amazon moving into the area. There's a lot of different kinds of things going on. Renewable energy. So whether it's Silicon Ranch that just achieved unicorn status less than a year ago, and Shoals Technology Group that had the largest IPO in history for a solar-focused, renewable energy-focused company. I mean, who would have thought Nashville? You know, what's going on in, you know, another one of our traditional key economic drivers. You know, you've got music, you have healthcare, you have advanced manufacturing, which has been a lot of automotive. But when you look at what's happened in the past couple of years, how they're retooling the GM plant down in Spring Hill to now manufacture the electric Cadillacs. When you look at what's going on in Chattanooga with Volkswagen and they're manufacturing electric vehicles there, Nissan's manufacturing their electric Leafs here in the Middle Tennessee area, and then Ford that just announced that, you know, they're investing billions of dollars just a little further west towards Memphis in a brand new plant. Kudos to the state for taking this very important manufacturing historical workforce that we have and finding a way to migrate that into, you know, what we're going to need tomorrow in these electronic vehicles, which to me is all about tech. You know, we're really leveraging technology to enhance the manufacturing that's been going on here and to offer people new opportunities for work that may have been going away were it not for being able to retool these factories to start making electric vehicles.
Yes.
There's a lot happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, this is only the tip of the iceberg. So I look forward to continuously learning about what is going on here, seeing how I can help build even more awareness, drive that traffic here, the opportunity here for you know, other people to kind of see this as a building ground for themselves, like a really solid place for foundation, both community, family, professionally. And man, I appreciate everything that you have been doing thus far, all that you will continue to do. And man, just thank you for this time. This was an honor.
Well, thanks for reaching out. I always enjoy talking about what's going on in Nashville, particularly as it relates to tech, and I like what WeFunder's doing. I think that's going to be a great addition to our community here and helping out a lot of entrepreneurs that are looking to either raise their first dollars or maybe to supplement dollars that they've just raised.
Yeah. So I will drop the link according, of course, so that everyone can check out what you have going on here more. Any final words before we get out of here?
So we were talking right before we turned the camera on about what I consider to be the X factor that Nashville has to offer as you compare Nashville with some of the other cities that you might look at as tech centers that might include Austin or San Francisco, Silicon Valley, Denver, Raleigh. There's a number of cities that we tend to get classified in that same list. To me, the X factor that Nashville brings. So if you're living outside of Nashville and trying to decide if this is a place you'd like to be, or if you're considering starting a company here and you're trying to figure out what Nashville has to offer you as opposed to moving someplace else to start a company, it all goes back in my mind to the strength of our iconic brand, which is Music City. And what Nashville has is this intersection of tech and creative that I think creates this magic that doesn't exist anywhere else. Sure, LA has a great creative scene, and Austin has a great creative scene, and New York has a great creative scene, but none of them are exactly what Nashville has to offer. And I think, people have been moving here for 100 years to pursue a career in music. That alone is a very entrepreneurial kind of journey. And so people here, it's just baked into our DNA. People just understand what being an entrepreneur is from the perspective of if you're trying to build your brand and create something from scratch. And so I think it helps that people do understand that. I think it helps you as an entrepreneur to get support and to find people that you can relate to help as you're building your brand. But the other way that it relates to tech in particular is this real alignment of skills that it takes to be a musician, whether it's a performing artist or a music writer. The mathematical underpinning and the creative combination of that. Yeah. That skill from a musician is so similar to those skills as particularly a software developer. So I just think we've got this magic going on here that doesn't exist anywhere else. If you're outside of Nashville looking at this is the place you ought to be.
Yes. The man, the myth, the legend, Brian Moyer. Thank you again, man. Thank you so much for this.
Thanks. It's great to be on the show.